Each of the elemental planes contains a myriad of life, thanks to both the matter of the plane itself coming to life, as well as infusing creatures until they belong body, mind, and soul to their new home. On the elemental plane of Earth elementals are the most obvious and numerous creatures on the plane, but they are not the only ones. The trifold symmetric Zorn, scavengers for raw minerals to consume. The walking crystals known as Chrismals, wandering around in psionic packs. In 5th edition, the now elemental gargoyles can be found flying in the tunnels of the plane. Rough-hewn statues or animated crystals that resemble the prime material plane animals also roam this plane. As with all elementals, and perhaps as with all of life, most despise being pulled away from their homes amongst the infinite expanse of solid but eternally shifting matter. Yet, there are those elementals that so hate the material plane, so hate anything not of Earth, that the only happiness they have in their miserable existence is spreading as much death as possible, making for a brutal assassin for those spellcasters brave enough to risk a summon. The kissing elemental, the earth assassin, the angriest dust. Let's talk about the Dune Stalker. So what are we going to be covering? In this episode, first we're going to talk about what a Dune Stalker is. Next, we'll dive into its origins or try to figure out the possible origins could be for the Dune Stalker. After that, we'll explore how I rebuilt the Dune Stalker for the 2024 edition of D&D and how they fare in combat. We'll close out then with some ideas about how to add the Dune Stalker not only as a monster of the week, but as a part of an ongoing campaign. The Dune Stalker itself has been with Dungeons & Dragons since the very first edition of Fiend Folio. 2nd edition had the Dune Stalker appear in the Monstrous Compendium Fiend Folio Appendix as well. Our last appearance of the Dune Stalker was in the 3rd edition Monster Manual 2, with a minor appearance in the Living Greyhawk Journal number 4. What is a Dune Stalker? I have 2 words when describing the Dune Stalker to you. Screaming elemental. Dune Stalkers are evil elementals of Earth, most commonly found on the material plane due to being summoned to hunt down a specific target and slay him or her with the, quote, kiss of death. Roughly humanoid in form, like all elementals are, Dune Stalkers remind me a lot of a gorilla. Despising cool temperatures and any sort of moisture, they have bony, gangly form covered in abrasive reddish-orange skin with a severe hunchback, and their face droops below the shoulder. Their long arms even drag on the ground like a gorilla, not explicitly described as using them to walk, but in my mind, they knuckle walk. Well, more likely claw walk thanks to those razor-sharp claws they have. It's not just how they look. Dune Stalkers really remind me of a pissed off gorilla that's about to rip your arm off and then beat you to death with it. It's explicitly mentioned in their monster entry that, quote, the only happiness Dune Stalkers took was in spreading evil. How they spread evil is by killing people. The more noble the heart, the better. Actually, they don't even really care if the creature is good or not. If the Dune Stalker assumes you're a good person, well, that's enough for them to try to kill you. The only thing they hate more than good people is the material plane. That makes more sense given their hatred of cool temperatures and any sort of moisture, which is, found in abundance there. What I find intriguing is that there is no reason given why the Dune Stalker just lashes out, attacking any creature on sight that it assumes is good. Evil creatures, by default, don't necessarily just attack good creatures on sight. Maybe demons, but that's more because that's their nature, not just that they're evil. A Dune Stalker has an intelligence of 13, so it's not acting on instinct. There's thought behind its actions. That's really why I wanted to explore the Dune Stalker. Why does it just seem to hate everything? Here's what we know about this angry elemental. Dune Stalkers are native to the elemental plane, but they are also frequently found on the gray wastes of Hades or in the para-elemental plane of magma. Dune Stalkers despise the material plane with a passion and avoid it as much as possible. Dune Stalkers are sometimes summoned by evil characters to kill targets using their uncanny tracking abilities. It's a faultless tracker, much like the invisible stalker. Also, Dune Stalkers can generate a deafening sound described as a rasping cough or an eerie nasal roar that they use to attack and kill their targets. Finally, and most intriguing of all, Dune Stalkers actually aren't elementals. So I've been calling the Dune Stalker an elemental, but in all previous editions of D&D where it has appeared, it wasn't an elemental, but an outsider. A creature type that doesn't exist in 5th edition, outsiders were basically any non-elemental creatures that originated on a plane other than the prime material plane. Celestial, demons, devils, and the like are considered outsiders. That being said, outsiders in 5th edition don't exist. That creature type doesn't exist in 5th edition. So I'm going to end up calling them elementals. Still, I think that initial use of the outsider type is important to the Dune Stalker's backstory. If it's not a true elemental, that can explain a lot. Like how no one knows where this thing actually came from. Let's see if we can answer that question. Where did the Dune Stalker come from? All my sources were in agreement that Dune Stalkers found on the material plane did not belong there, and given how much they hate it, I agree that there's no way that the Dune Stalkers could have come from the prime material plane. Another plane that scholars bring up that could be the origins of the Dune Stalker is the quasi-elemental plane of dust. The plane of dust is the inner plane at the intersection of the elemental plane of Earth and the negative energy plane. It's a place of wind, sand, and grit, where living creatures ever decay to dust. However, I don't think the Dune Stalker actually has come from the plane of dust. Another plane that is brought up is the para-elemental plane of magma, probably due to the fact that the Dune Stalker really likes heat and dryness. However, the plane of magma does not fit for me. 1, that would make it an elemental once again. 2, the Dune Stalker has no fire element to it. There's no firepower, it's not immune to fire, nothing about it screams fire. So the plane of magma is out. Here's an interesting note. In the 3.5 entry for the Dune Stalker, it says that the Dune Stalkers are creatures native to the elemental plane of Earth. That would make it an elemental, which is a key problem that I've mentioned before. There can be non-elemental life from an elemental plane, but it is a rare thing, and this thing does seem like an elemental, or at least it has a lot of elemental aspects to it. However, here's the very next line of the monster entry. Though they are also frequently found on the gray wastes of Hades. Hades, the gray waste of Hades. That intrigues me the most for another reason. It's a plane of neutral evil, just like the Dune Stalkers. The Abyss is home to chaotic evil. The Nine Hells is home to lawful evil. In the middle of the two is the neutral evil outer plane known as the Gray Waste of Hades, a bleak and apathetic plane of despair that drains hope and will from its inhabitants. Hades is the home to daemons, or the Yugoloth. These self-serving fiends are the very personification of avarice, infamous for backstabbing when presented with a greater reward. I don't think Dune Stalkers are Yugoloths. While also evil outsiders, the Dune Stalkers don't have the same drive for deception and the perfection of evil. I do, however, think they came from the same plane. With the elemental planes able to support non-elemental life, why not an evil outer plane support non-fiend life? The entire plane is characterized by a draining, color-bleaching effect and soul-sapping sickness. What became the Dune Stalkers, I think, got stuck on Hades and became affected by that soul-sapping sickness. It became a shadow of what it once was, losing part of itself as Hades leached onto it. What was the Dune Stalker originally? I think it was an air elemental. The thing that really says air elemental is its sonic attack. It's created from inhaling vast quantities of dry air. Sonic damage, thunder damage in 5th edition tends to be an air elemental thing. That's why I think it was once an air elemental. Which air elemental? I've mentioned it before, and they share part of the name. The Invisible Stalker. Around since 2nd edition and making it all the way to the 5th edition in 2024, Invisible Stalkers are solitary creatures native to the elemental plane of air. Invisible and their true form unknown, spellcasters are known to conjure these elementals to serve as assassins. Invisible Stalkers are kind of the perfect assassin because they are invisible, they relentlessly hunt down their quarry, and they leave very little evidence of the kill. Also, here's an important note. Invisible Stalkers are known to deeply resent any task given to them, especially by those who summon them. Unpacking them, the two elementals, well, the elemental and the outsider, share a lot in common. They are both solitary creatures, even amongst their own kind. They are both summoned to kill. They don't care for people or kind of anyone. And they are both relentless hunters. My theory of what the Dune Stalker is and why it hates everything is tied together. An invisible stalker got stuck in Hades. With my theory, we start off with an invisible stalker who managed to get stuck in Hades. Actually, it has to be more than one in order for a group of these monsters to exist. On the Great Wheel, the plane of air is not located near Hades, and given how little reason there is for any rational creature to want to go there, the reason I see more than one invisible stalker ending up in Hades is because they were sent there. As always, I think a wizard is to blame. The invisible stalker is often conjured by a spellcaster to complete a task, usually the assassination of a target or just hunting them down. Invisible stalkers don't like to be bound to their summoner's service, but because of the magic ritual to summon them, they are compelled to perform the service to its completion. That means if an invisible stalker is assigned to hunt down a target, it won't stop hounding the target until they catch them or slay them. Once an invisible stalker accomplishes its goal, it gets its free will back. It's no longer bound to service. And normally, at this point, invisible stalkers go back to their home in the elemental plane of air. However, it's noted that invisible stalkers will sometimes hang around the prime material plane after they are freed from service, which is really bad for the wizard that summoned it because now there's an invisible assassin that's not happy with them hanging about. What's a wizard to do, since sending it back to the plane of air means it can be brought back to the material plane with that grudge if it is? Well, if the invisible stalker won't forgive, what if it forgot? And also, what if its will was sucked out, so even if it doesn't forget, it won't care? I think a wizard had a lot of enemies and sent a lot of invisible stalkers to take care of those enemies. However, the wizard didn't want to have to deal with the invisible stalkers and their justifiable outrage, So the wizard banished them all to Hades, thinking that would take care of the issue. And it certainly did not. The grayness of Hades affects the very spirit, slowly eroding a person's will, hope, and emotions through a spiritual sickness known as the Grays. Prolonged exposure to the Grays can lead to a loss of sanity and memories, eventually turning visitors into permanent residents of the plane. Stuck on Hades, the trapped, invisible stalkers get their very essence drained out of them until what remains are just husks. Elementals are so closely tied to their elements that this draining away is even crueler. For air elementals, I think this means the living air that animates them gets drained away. They become so drained that the invisible stalkers can no longer be considered air elementals. The living air is gone. They almost become ghosts. That's why in 3rd edition, they were considered outsiders. The elemental aspect of them was utterly lost. In the Great Wheel cosmology, 3, 2, 1. In the Great Wheel cosmology, Hades is in the same neighborhood as the Earth plane. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say that the invisible stalkers that got drained in Hades managed to wander out and wound up in the nearby plane of Earth. Hades is a unique plane. Not only is it connected to the adjacent planes and the Great Wheel, it actually has connections across the wheel. Add in the river Styx, which flows through, and there are plenty of ways to wander off Hades. And the invisible stalkers found a common one that led to the elemental plane of Earth. Being once air elementals, and the plane of Earth being the closest plane, elemental plane, the former invisible stalkers were drawn to it. Once on the plane of Earth, the living Earth of the plane basically filled in the gaps of the invisible stalkers' missing sanity, memories, and their very essence. Not enough to become an elemental, at least not in 3rd edition, but enough to become something. A Dune Stalker. What we have is a creature infused with Earth, with a history of air, and a really, really good reason to hate the material plane and everyone on it. That's my theory anyway. Full of anger at their very existence and at everything around them, Dune Stalkers that are trapped on the material plane take out their frustration by killing everyone nearby, and they certainly have the tools to do it. As a CR9 Earth Elemental, Dune Stalkers are reasonably tough, but not anything outstanding in terms of survival. I eyeballed the Earth Elemental for inspiration when creating the 5th edition version of the Dune Stalker, but really the two don't have much in common. I gave the Dune Stalker the same immunities as the Earth Elemental, but I did leave out the vulnerability to thunder damage. That vulnerability didn't really seem fitting for the monster, especially since it uses sound to kill its enemies. Resistance-wise, it's specifically noted in the monster entry that, quote, mundane weapons cause little harm to the Dune Stalker's flesh, which is why I gave resistance to the standard weapon damage types. Their monster entry noted that they're also, quote, inherently resistant to the weave, so they also got the trait magic resistance. Other than that, I gave them a typical CR9's AC and hit points. Figuring out its actions was the trick for this build, starting with its shout. In 3rd edition, 3 times a day, a Dune Stalker could use the spell Shout as a spell-like ability. Shout was a 30-foot cone that dealt sonic, thunder damage in 5th edition, damage to deafen a target on a failed save. That was pretty easy to convert into 5th edition. Like basic elementals, the Dune Stalker has a slam attack with the added benefit of grappling the target, a grapple needed for its Kiss of Death. The Kiss of Death is the showstopper. In 3rd edition, the Kiss of Death was a sonic and death effect delivered with the Dune Stalker's face pressed directly against the victims, which would require them to grapple the creature first. The creature then would make a fortitude save, DC 15, so kind of a difficult one. A success on the saving throw left them stunned for 1 round. A failure, on the other hand, quote, sets up lethal vibrations in the opponent's body that result in instant death. Yes, if you failed this roll, you died regardless of anything else going on, regardless of hit points, death saves, everything. Like I said, it's not a hard fortitude save, but no matter what, 1s on a d20 were auto failures. Even better, this ability is usable at will. There is no limit. So anytime the Dune Stalker grappled a creature, there was a chance it would just straight up kill them. Kiss of Death was a hard one to convert. 5th edition really doesn't have a lot of instant death mechanics for monsters. The closest we really get is something like the Beholder's Death Ray, which the target dies if the ray reduces them to 0 hit points, avoiding the death saving throws to head straight to dead. Another sort of similar effect is reducing a target's hit point maximum, which obviously they die if they have no hit point maximum, if their hit point maximum is 0. The power word kill spell really does kind of fit this. If the target has 100 hit points or fewer, it dies. Otherwise, it takes a bunch of psychic damage. I initially started to go down the hit point maximum reduction route, but my mind kept returning to a take on power word kill. An instant death seemed fitting for the Dune Stalker's role as a summoned assassin, keeping it as a constitution saving throw towards a creature it has grappled. Should that creature succeed on the saving throw, it has the stun condition until the end of the Dune Stalker's next turn. However, should they fail and the target has 40 hit points or fewer, well then, that's instant death. I went with 40 hit points because a CR9 should be a suitable challenge for about level 6, level 7, and that's about the average. That's a little bit lower than the average hit points, so it'll be right on the razor's edge. Should they survive, they'll get some thunder damage that's surely going to set them up for a lethal kiss the next round. I understand why wizards would summon a Dune Stalker. They're pretty brutal assassins. Straightforward, but brutal. Once a Dune Stalker has tracked its prey, it's going to want to ambush them to deliver a surprise kiss of death. With its climbing and jumping capabilities, I see a Dune Stalker liking to ambush from above. Since the Dune Stalker wants its prey dead quick, fast, and in a hurry, it's going to try to kill them first by leaping down and hitting them with a slam attack, which will hopefully grapple them. Once grappled, it's Kiss of Death time, which will either kill the target or probably put them in kill range for the next round. At the very worst, the target is stunned, giving the Dune Stalker another go without any real response from the target. If the prey was in a group, or it's just attacking a group because it's angry at everything, the Dune Stalker should start its ambush with one of its shouts to deafen the group and get the advantage right away. Added bonus is that damage that they're going to take might bring some characters into Kiss of Death lethal range. After that, it goes after its prey, trying to instant kill them or kill them via the thunder damage from the kiss. If there is no specific target or the target's dead, I don't think the Dune Stalker would run away or avoid the fight, but find whoever is the most good or noble looking of the group and leap at them for a kiss. Basically, bouncing from target to target and kissing them until they're all dead or it's dead. Being an extremely straightforward monster in terms of their mentality, outlook, and how one might encounter them, the stories of the Dune Stalkers I see revolving around those reasons the party could encounter one. The first story that comes to mind is a Dune Stalker who has been sent after someone the party has been hired to protect. A merchant pulled a fast one on a spellcaster and was able to get away with a rare magical item. The merchant needs to get as far away as possible and hires the party to basically act as guards while getting out of dodge, obviously not telling them what's going on. The spellcaster, angry at the loss of the magic item as well as the humiliation, summons a Dune Stalker with the express mission of killing the merchant and retrieving the item. The Dune Stalker ambush is the reveal of the plot to the players, a sudden, violent ambush whose aftermath kind of dictates the rest of the story. If the Dune Stalker kills the merchant and gets the magic item, does the party follow to avenge what happened, thus leading them to discover the wizard holding the leash? If the Dune Stalker is killed, well, the wizard's likely just to keep summoning them, so the party will be harried the entire time until they can figure out a way to get beyond the wizard's reach. To add even more spice, when a true elemental dies, its body's destroyed, but its essence, its soul, and consciousness simply returns to the elemental plane it originated from. That means the wizard could keep summoning the same Dune Stalker to try to kill the merchant, the angriest Dune Stalker who might start learning from their mistakes. Dune Stalkers are not only known for their ability to assassinate, but to track down their targets. While most often summoned to kill, a wizard might summon a Dune Stalker with the express goal of retrieving the target alive. The party could randomly find an object that appears shiny but unremarkable otherwise, unaware it's a lich soul jar that's been long lost. This lich lost its soul jar centuries ago and has been unable to find it, becoming a recluse because, well, it's lost its soul jar. What happens if it's, resurrected next to it? It could be trapped for eternity. It could be destroyed upon resurrection. The party finding it could alert the lich that the soul jar is once more on the move. Afraid of the outside world after all these years, the lich sends a Dune Stalker to get the soul jar back. When the ambush occurs, the Dune Stalker is focused on the soul jar instead of, strictly killing like they normally would be, leading the players to discover that they have a soul jar in their possession. Do they destroy the soul jar? Do they make a deal with the lich? Do they bury it? Well, they're going to have to make some sort of decision, because if they destroy one Dune Stalker, surely the lich is going to send another one, and another one. Another story could start with a king being killed by a Dune Stalker, leaving their throne vacant and without a chosen heir. Unfortunately for everybody, the ruler's children, all of the ruler's children, have their sights set on the throne, and they're all accusing each other of the murder, and a civil war is brewing. In a desperate attempt to prevent the war, the king's former council hires the party to figure out who killed the king and thus would be invalid for the throne by laws of the kingdom. The only possible proof, however, is the Dune Stalker, who is both back on the plane of Earth and unlikely to cooperate. The party has to somehow capture the Dune Stalker alive, bring it back to the kingdom, and convince it to say who summoned it before a civil war breaks out. The angriest elemental caught my attention for its mystery, and what a mystery. It's an earth elemental, not really. It's also not an air elemental. What is it? The Dune Stalker shows that anything is possible in the worlds of D&D, especially if wizards get involved. After all, if an air elemental assassin can become an earth elemental assassin, literally anything can happen. A boiling water elemental? A gibbering beholder? A magic-eating anteater? Anything. Anything is possible. And I think that's just the best. In the description below, I have a link to a monster stat block for the Dune Stalker, updated to the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, ready for you to unleash upon your players. As we are a growing channel, if you found this interesting, please leave a like and a subscribe for all our future videos. It really does mean the world. Let me thank all of you for your time, and wishing you all the best until we meet again for our next monster.